All right, looks like we are live, and I think that we are getting a much better stream quality this week. So I want to thank all of you for coming today, whether you're joining us live or coming at us after the fact, either here on Facebook or over on YouTube. We're glad that you are here today. So last week when we talked about, had our devotion time together, we talked about the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And I think one of the things that I talked about briefly there was that that comes from the Old Testament, and it comes from two different parts of the Old Testament. So for week 2, for our topic of more love, I thought it'd be important for us to talk about those Old Testament passages. And so let's dig into them. The Great Commandment comes to us from Deuteronomy chapter 6. And I have to tell you, it's one of my favorite passages, one that has always meant a lot to me. And so we are going to take a look at that. And thank you for everyone who's here watching us today. I've got some things pulled up, and I've kind of moved stuff around. So if you see me glancing around, it's because I've got all of my different things set up in different places, which I think is what's allowing us to have a much better stream this week. So let's take a look at the Old Testament reading, which comes to us from, as I mentioned, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 9. Israel, listen, and this is the Common English Bible. Our God is the Lord, only the Lord. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your strength. These words that I'm commanding you today must always be on your minds. Recite them to your children. Talk about them when you are sitting around your house and when you are out and about, when you are lying down and when you are getting up. Tie them on your hand as a sign. They should be on your forehead as a symbol. Write them on your house's door frames and on your city's gates. And that's where we'll stop our reading for right now. So I love that passage. It's been a passage that has always been really meaningful for me. And the part of the reason why I think it's so meaningful is, one, obviously it reminds us of the greatest commandment that we read about in our Gospels, with Jesus and the lawyer having that conversation. But then it also, that idea that we should, have physical reminders of it, wrapped around our wrist, written on our forehead, plastered around our doorposts of our house. And I just have always loved that image of it being around our house. It should be everywhere. And I love that idea of that. And so, and to teach it to our children and to pass that on to them. Again, just something that I think is a wonderful image to have. And so one of the things that I wanted to say is that, that starts in our homes. Obviously, if we're teaching it to our children, that really does start in our homes. And again, to me, that is a really important part. Passing on God's commandments, passing on God's love. And this was written at a time in which the people were preparing to enter the promised land, and they were learning how to live together, both with God and with one another. Just an incredible way in which we should learn to live with people and to love God and to love one another. I absolutely love that passage. One of the other passages that the second part, so that's the first part, when Jesus talks about love, to love God and love neighbor, there are the two passages that he brings up, is to love God with all heart, mind, strength, and then to love our neighbor as ourself. And that comes to us from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 17. I was just getting that pulled up for us. You must not hate your neighbor or your fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your fellow Israelite strongly so that you don't become responsible for him. You must not take revenge nor hold a grudge against any of your people. Instead, you must love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. So, again, that's the second part of the greatest commandment that Jesus says, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And so this is where Jesus gets that from Leviticus, that we should love our neighbor as ourself. And one of the things that I love about that is there is a story from the Talmud. And I'm going to pull that up here right now for us to look at together. And it is a story from the Talmud about two rabbis. And I've always loved this story. I've just never found just the right way to kind of incorporate this into a sermon before. So I'm glad that I can share it with you here right now. And it says, on another occasion, it happened that a certain heathen came before Shammai, Rabbi Shammai, and he said to him, "Make me a proselyte on the condition that you teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot." Thereupon he, Rabbi Shammai, chased him away with the builder's cubit that was in his hand. When he came before Hillel, Rabbi Hillel, he also asked Hillel to teach him the entire Torah while standing on one foot, and Rabbi Hillel replied, "What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the whole Torah, while the rest is commentary. Go and learn it." Another story, not from the Bible, but a story about the Bible, about becoming a disciple of Israel. And I just think that that is such a wonderful passage because, one, Rabbi Hillel basically uses that Leviticus text of, love your neighbor as yourself, and says that is the most important thing to learn. If you want to be a follower of Yahweh, if you want to love God and do what is right in God's eyes, then love your neighbor and don't hate them. Don't do what is wrong to them. And one of the things that I love about that passage, though, is that the rest is commentary. The end of this story says, go and learn it. And the thing that I love about that is that Rabbi Hillel is not saying that, what is hateful to you, don't do to your neighbor. So basically, love your neighbor as yourself, as we talk about. But what he doesn't say that's the only thing you need to know about the Torah, about the Bible. And then just, now you're a God follower, a God worshiper. But then he says the rest is commentary. Go and learn it. So yes, that is the basis. Yes, that is your foundation. But then it says to go and learn it. Go and be a disciple. Go and learn so that you can understand what it all really means and what it means to live out loving your neighbor as yourself. And so that is why I love this passage so much and this story from the Talmud about Rabbi Hillel and Rabbi Shammai. And so ultimately what this says to me, and what I think is a good question that we should ask ourselves, is based on our theme of more love and trying to share more love in our world today, is to maybe begin the day by asking God, help me be more loving than not loving. Kind of taking Rabbi Hillel's statement and taking the passage is from Deuteronomy and Leviticus, and framing it in the mindset of, how do I be more loving today than not loving? And I say that because, let's face it, we all know, and I hope we all can be honest with ourselves and say we are not perfect. We try to be good. We try to be perfect. We do our best, but we fall short. Paul says, we all fall short of the glory of God. We are all sinners. Martin Luther, we all sinner and saint at the same time. We are going to fall short. So to say that I am going to be purely loving today and that nothing else is going to happen is kind of setting ourselves up for failure, if you understand what I mean. You know, we are setting ourselves up for failure if we really think that we can be perfect and perfectly loving the entire day. But if we ask ourselves and ask God to help us to be more loving than not loving, then we are trying to do our best as Christians. And that's the best we can do. We do our best. We love boldly. We sin boldly because through our trying, we're going to sin. It's just, like I said, we can't be 100% perfect in loving all the time, but we're trying. And if at the end of the day, when we come back to God at the end of the day, and we reflect with God, you know, God, how did I do? Was I more loving than not loving today? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe the answer is no. And maybe the response is, and how can I improve tomorrow? And then you wake up the next day and you say, God, help me be more loving today than not loving. Help me to love myself and my neighbor and you more than I express not loving people. And we do our best to spread more love, relying on God's power. Again, going to that song that I love, more power. And, you know, I'm not going to be able to play it on here because I don't want to get slapped with being muted because of copyright issues. So head over to YouTube, look up the song More Love, More Power, and listen to it. More love, more power, more of you in my life, God. And how can I love more today than I don't love? How can I spread more joy, more happiness, more peace? How can I love the Lord, the God, with all my heart and soul and strength more than I don't do that? And we work at it each day because it is a journey. It is a journey of faith. It is something that we constantly work at so that we can work at becoming better disciples, better followers, better apostles to spread that love to others so that they too can maybe be like this proselyte from the story of the Talmud. And that we can share that greatest commandment or the great commandment from the Old Testament. That we should love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And that is the most important thing. But that we should still study and read and look at the Bible to understand the ways in which we can best accomplish that, so that we truly can love our neighbor as ourselves. Thank you for joining me today for our midweek devotion. Take care of yourselves and God bless. And thank you for joining me. Bye, everyone.